Are we entering a new era of politics on the right where we can say the truth about Israel, that not every criticism of the Israeli government is anti-Semitism, not every action by Netanyahu is like somehow has some biblical origin that we must accede to? It seemed as though President Trump was equally critical of Israel and Iran, sometimes more critical of Israel than Iran. What does that mean for the shape of the discussion we're able to have around these foreign policy questions?
Look, without a doubt, there are a lot of people that believe insane things about Israel. But that being said, for the longest time in this country, they did run this narrative that if you're criticizing Israel, you hate Jews. And it's like, come on, calm down. Those of us who grew up watching endless regime change wars and the ramifications of this, the death of American troops and personnel, are not criticizing Israel because they're Jewish. It's because they're dragging us into, as allies, foreign wars that we should not be involved in. So when Trump dropped that F-bomb on TV over Israel engaging in those strikes, I loved it. Not only was that quote from Donald Trump historic, but it says to me that he's going to hold a grudge, and I don't mean a childish grudge. I think he's going to remember that Israel runs the risk of dragging us into conflicts that negatively impact his domestic agenda, particularly with, a year and a half out from the midterms. Trump doesn't want to stain on his record. He needs to maintain a positive status with as many Americans as possible. Israel deciding to go after Iran over one rocket and bomb a radar station after he said not to do it, I think it's going to put us in a position where those who staunchly hate Israel and those who are more critical of foreign wars see Trump is going to lead us in a direction where we're not going to be spending money on issues like that because of how it blew up. It backfires when he does. So I'm optimistic. I think this actually worked out to a net benefit across the board, even though I'm not a fan of these foreign strikes.
President Trump was persecuted, prosecuted, everything under the sun from the left and the right. And your program, your audience often saw through the narratives that were dishonest and that were motivated by the media or the government in some way. We went through this weird moment this past week where people like Mike Pence and John Bolton were cheering on the actions of the administration. And then some of the very people who were cheering on the worst actions against Trump took it upon themselves to be the digital hall monitors of who was or wasn't real MAGA. And I was dying to know what you thought about that when you had these neocons saying, well, actually, real MAGA means preemptive strikes and regime change. It seems as though we've come back to the foreign policy realism mean on that question. But how did you take those moments as you observed them?
Honestly, I think Trump is the arbiter of what is MAGA. It's his brand. He decides, he said Thomas Massie wasn't MAGA. And it's like, okay, well, that's his branding. So I guess technically it's true. But if we're talking about a neutral sense of what we all believe makes America great again, then I actually think Thomas Massie, Rand Paul, they're right on the money. But I don't like the fear-mongering, the calls for impeachment, and I especially don't like the neocons who hated Donald Trump, who were never Trumpers, now acting like all of a sudden they actually represent what it means. Mark Levin goes on Fox News and says it actually is America first to bomb Iran. Young people aren't buying it. The generations have shifted. Okay, secure our borders, deport the criminals, make America great again by actually building up our communities and fixing our infrastructure. No one's going to believe that dropping bunker buses in a foreign country makes our country greater. You can argue it secures our interests in the Middle East, but I think for most young people in this country, they're asking themselves, why can't I afford a house? Not, why does Iran want nuclear weapons?